It's time to talk about Monopoly again. So earlier this year, I did a retro board game review where I compared a number 9 long box edition of Monopoly from the mid 50s to this 2021 edition. Now, at the time, this was the current edition of Monopoly, but since then, Hasbro has now released a 2025 edition. So I thought it would be really cool to compare the 2021 and 2025 and see what changed between these two versions of Monopoly. If you'd like to see that original video that has more of a deep dive into the history of Monopoly, I have a link in the description down below. But for today, we're just looking at these two editions, the most recent and the previous. So let's get started with the game box on the 2021 edition. Right away, we can see this is a pretty large game box by comparison to the new one. The player pieces are featured front and center with all of their personality intact, as well as a cartoon depiction of Mr. Monopoly inviting you to play the game, and the Monopoly branding boldly emblazoned right along the top of the box. Now, when we flip it over, we again see Mr. Monopoly brilliantly portrayed near the top of the box art, as well as a picture of the game board itself. Description of the game is relatively sparse, but be it that Monopoly is one of the most iconic board games of all time, I can't fault Hasbro for assuming that most of the audience shopping for it already knows what it is. Now, this is a lift-off top box. It features a plastic vacuum-formed organizer for the properties and cash to make banking duties much easier. It also has a little cardboard spacer in there, beneath which you can store the loose pieces like the hotels, the player pieces, and the dice. On top of that cardboard insert, they've actually printed a number of hints and tips to keep you from using house rules that might unnecessarily extend the game. Things like adding cash to free parking or allowing players to make loans. These are things that are really unnecessary, drag the game out, and oftentimes reduce the fun factor. The board folds into quarters, so the cardboard insert keeps the board to one side of the box, helping distribute the weight. When we move over to the 2025 edition, right away we can see this much smaller footprint. Now this kind of, to me, harkens back to the old small boxes of the popular editions in the early days of Monopoly. However, unlike those, this one still fits the board inside as the board folds into quarters. Now we see two of the most famous board spaces displayed very prominently as cover art, Pass Go and Boardwalk, as well as, I would argue, the racing car is probably the fan favorite game piece, and I'm basing this off of a little YouTube poll that I had done. I'm limited to 4 images in my image polls on YouTube when I'm doing community posts, and I did not choose the race car as one of the options to have people vote on, and boy did I learn in a hurry that the race car is a fan favorite, so there's no wonder why it's the one that they chose to put on the front of the box. When we flip it over, we do see a depiction of the game board itself. Again, the description is relatively sparse, but we're taking for granted that most people know what Monopoly is. Now, this is a lift-off top box. Inside, it features one of the best organizers that I have seen for a board game in recent memory. It's 2 vacuum-formed pieces of plastic. The lower tray does have an organizer caddy for the properties, the cash, and your community chest and chance cards, as well as an area for you to keep your loose pieces, your houses, hotels, player pieces, and dice. However, this one also includes a clear Monopoly branded vacuum-formed lid that snaps onto that tray, keeping everything extremely well organized and clean and neat in this box. When I compare even the noise that both of these boxes make when you're moving them around, this little caddy makes a huge difference. So I was very pleased. You know what? We're gonna say it. I get to do this. I love this. The organizer caddy in the 2025 Monopoly pleases the couch. Okay, this feels just as good as the organizer that came with the modern version of Hero Quest that I reviewed not long ago from Avalon Hill. They also had a great vacuum-formed caddy for all of the figurines, and this one in Monopoly, this is like a gold standard. I can't stop gushing about how much I like the new organizer. So before we get too stuck on that, let's hop into the details of the game itself, starting with the 2021 edition. Right away, we can see that the general spaces show the classic board art, albeit with the updated Monopoly currency markings. In the center, the branding for Monopoly is bold and features a lot of drop shadow and dimension. Also, Mr. Monopoly is depicted extending his hand out, inviting you to play. The whole board has this sort of base, sort of like a teal green color, which is iconic to Monopoly boards dating way back to the origin of the game. When we look at the community chest and chance cards, these have sharp corners and are printed color on the backs, black and white on the front. Now, one thing that's unique about this particular year's run is at one point Hasbro had a little thing where they were trying to update what it said on the community chest cards to make you feel like you were more a part of a community. So there's more of like story to these. I'll give you an example. Community chest. You set aside time every week to hang out with your elderly neighbor. You've heard some amazing stories. Collect $100. So I understand interacting with people around you makes you feel like more of a member of the community, but it does seem like a little bit of superfluous fluff there. However, you know, they're trying to update the game. I'll give them props for that. When we look at the player pieces, we've got the thimble, the dog, the penguin, the race car, the cat, the top hat, the ducky, and the battleship. All very nice finish to them. Decent weight, classic metal there. The dice are classic six-sided D6 die marked with pips, range 1 through 6. They have a decent weight. They feel pretty standard for dice these days, which is to say that I find that a lot of these six-sided die that I'm getting in modern games are just a hair, maybe like a millimeter smaller in dimension than ones that I've gotten in classic games that I've reviewed, but it doesn't hurt the function at all. When we go to the houses and hotels, when I did my previous review, I definitely complained about the diminutive size of the houses. They are tiny. I don't like handling them. I understand you have to fit, you know, up to 4 of them on a property and everything, but I just did not like the feel of the houses. The hotel's a little bit better, but they're naturally just a little bit bigger. So for me, it's more that you have to move stuff around the board, and I like to have a nice tactile experience when I'm playing board games. I like it when all the pieces, parts, and accoutrements feel nice. Moving on to the properties, this was one of my complaints in the review, was the property cards are much smaller in 2021 and made of a flimsier cardstock than what I'm used to in previous iterations, albeit the information on them is largely unchanged. And one complaint I had about modern editions is you'll notice that the text is printed in black, whether the background color is darker or lighter, meaning the contrast between the darker background color and the print is so low on some cards that it can be difficult for some people to read, which is kind of an accessibility issue of mine. I don't like seeing that in games, but they serve their purpose. The cash is probably like 19-pound unsealed bond paper in various colors to denote the denominations. All these colors are the classic colors that you'll see from the earlier editions of Monopoly, so they do kind of keep the color spectrum pretty uniform. The print on these does look very similar to older Monopoly money, which is modeled after older American currency. Now, when we move on to the 2025 edition, some of the changes you're going to see right away. The branding in the center of the board is much more bold with less drop shadow, and Mr. Monopoly is nowhere to be seen. The game is really focusing on the game itself, which is actually something that I like. I like the more flat, bold, I'd almost say brutalist look of the 2025 edition, but that's not to say every piece of the board is brutalist. In fact, one thing that I like is you'll notice the outer portion of the board is lighter in color than the center portion of the board, but when you look close, it's not just lighter in color, it has this lovely herringbone print on it, which adds a very premium look to the game. So overall, the game board art, in my opinion, is a massive improvement. Hasbro has made their logo match the color a little bit more tastefully as well, so this feels a little less commercialized and more focused on the game title itself, and that's something that I like. It's a very subtle difference, but it's very noticeable. The community chest and chance cards have now gone back to their classic yellow and orange colors. Now, these are not actually yellow and orange cardstock. They're white cardstock, you can tell by the edges, but it's printed on both sides. And we have gone back to the classic descriptions and art So like the Mr. Monopoly art here is two-dimensional line art as opposed to all of the shading and 3D art that they tried to do for him in 2021. And I prefer the more classic look to Mr. Monopoly. Also, the messages are your classic messages. Go to jail, go to directly to jail, bank error in your favor, collect $200, school fees, pay $50. There's no real story to it, and that's fine. You don't need that fluff. Also, one thing I'll note is they rounded the corners on these cards, which makes shuffling easier and also adds to the longevity of cards. When you have sharp corners on your cards, they tend to get dogged and wear easier. The stars of the show, the game pieces, are huge compared to the old ones. I bet you can probably see on camera, but the 2025 edition game pieces are easily 30% larger than the game pieces in 2021. And I love that. They are so much easier to pick up and move around. These are actually larger than the classic game pieces that I recall playing with. So this might be, I kind of want to bust out some of the older sets and have a look and see how much bigger these are, but I don't recall the metal game pieces ever feeling this nice and generously sized. And the weight of them, the feel, it's great. Now, again, we have the thimble, the dog, the penguin, the race car, the cat, the top hat, the ducky. However, the battleship has been changed out for a bag of cash. So that's the one major player piece change. The D6 die, six-sided with pips, range 1 through 6, are pretty much exactly the same between generations, so nothing to write home about. The houses and hotels make me so happy. They have sized these up so they're nice and chunky. The houses in particular. The hotel, it made a nice difference, but the houses, and all they did really was they added some length to them. So that like they're not even dimensionally much larger, but they enlarge them where it counts, making them easier to handle, and you can still fit 4 of them on the property very, very nicely. Kudos for that change. I'm very happy. Anytime you improve the tactile experience, wonderful. And on that note, the properties have gone back to their traditionally large size, which I really like. I know that this might be nice for table efficiency, having smaller ones, but I prefer the larger ones. They even though the font, I actually compared, the font doesn't seem to be any different, but just the spacing makes it easier on the eyes, easier to read. They still have the same drawback of dark color print on dark backgrounds having low contrast. So boo there, but otherwise, the size and the changes to the size, or rather reverting back to the older dimensions, wonderful change. I'm happy with that. The cash is probably 19, 20 pound bond paper again in all of our traditional colors here. This time a little bit more pastel, I'm noticing, just slightly, but that's the kind of shade change that can happen between batches when you're sourcing paper, even from the same manufacturer. Now, the print actually looks a little bit more like modern cash by comparison to the 2021 edition, which looks like classic American currency. Monopoly's new currency actually has hallmarks from other currency from around the world, which I believe will make localization easier. And at the same time, some of these design cues are starting to make their way into American currency as well. So this is a nice refresh that probably makes localization easier, but also reflects some of the changes that we're seeing in modern currency. Now, when we get to the rule books, in the 2021 edition, we had this fold out here. Not really so much of a rule book as a fold out. Now, this is more than adequate. It's definitely held the test of time. Doesn't have any quarter corner folds that are uniquely prone to wear and tear. This is regular bond paper, probably like a 24 pound, unsealed, not printed full bleed. But the fold out holds up and the rules are complete. It's very nice. When we compare that to the modern rules, now this is another one. The modern rules for the 2025 Monopoly are printed on sealed paper, full bleed, full color print. Now this is probably like a magazine weight, so probably like a, I don't know, maybe 60 pound. It's not cardstock, but like a sealed paper here. I mean, probably actually maybe a 32 now that I think 60 is awfully generous. But it's a decent weight. A little bit thicker than your average magazine page, not as thick as the average cover. Like I said, printed on 11 by 17 now, you only have one fold, one area prone to wear, and it's just right here. So again, anytime you're reducing folds, I'm a big fan. And this set of rules has something that really tickles me. There is a win tracker where you can track the date, who won, and the amount of cash they had at the end of the game. Way to store that salt for future generations to reflect on, Hasbro. I approve. I wholeheartedly approve. So I do like all of the changes they've made, from the rulebook to the board to the box, everything about the 2025 edition. I have to thank the audience members who requested that I did this comparison, because to be frank, I should have done it earlier. One, I didn't want to double dip on Monopoly so quickly, having already done a decent video on Monopoly earlier. But two, because I really did not anticipate this drastic of a change, and more so this drastic of an improvement in quality of production. I am so happy with Hasbro right now. If you're wondering if it's worth picking up a 2025 edition to upgrade, 100%. 100%. Smaller footprint in your house, high quality game pieces, like really nice quality game pieces, great quality print, from the cards to the dice to the hotels to the houses. Everything looks nice and sharp and polished. Even the game pieces themselves, when we talk about polish, these just feel like they have a smoother finish. To be honest, these are nice and clean. I've only opened them and played this for the review and looked at it for the comparison, and the ones from the 2021 edition look slightly duller, a little bit rougher than the 2025. So even the quality of those pieces, everything about it has improved across the board. And the storage solution is probably one of the biggest selling points for me. One, you have a small footprint, but two, you have that nice plastic caddy. That vacuform caddy is huge. One of the things that I was really disappointed in when I bought the 2021 and the 2013 edition is both of them, very similar, have this size box, and yet the board folds into quarters. And I always felt like if you're going to fold the board into quarters, then just make the box fit. I've had this issue with other games too, like Sorry was another one where I went out of my way to buy the long box because I really prefer boards that fold in half, and I kept getting quarter fold boards even in these boxes. I felt like I felt like this bordered on being misleading about the dimensions that the board might fold into. However, that being said, if they just own it and they serve it in a square box like this, this is really becoming the vogue for board games in general, to have a square footprint. There are a number of shelving solutions that are quite popular that happen to fit these cubes very nicely. And so you'll see that a lot of modern games, going from American style ones to heavy Euros, all tend to try to fall into a sort of cubic dimension with their box design. So they're really stepping Monopoly into the modern era. Even though I still feel that this kind of reminds me of the popular editions from back in the day, it's really more an adjustment to what's in fashion for modern games. So I guess I'm going to go ahead and say great value. Thank you for suggesting to me. And I want to ask, is there a particular version of Monopoly that you're a fan of? Have you tried Monopoly Go yet? I haven't tried. I did notice that this game board box has a big black band across it that says the classic board game, and I wondered why they felt such a need to denote it until I saw on another shelf Monopoly Go, and both of them have the Go featured very prominently from past Go right in the center of the board, so I could see people being confused easily. So Monopoly Go is one I'll have to check out. There's a bunch of expansions too. I don't know. Have you played any of them? Which ones do you think I should look at? Comment below and let me know. Thanks for joining me today, and we'll see you next time.